House comes to questions for oral answer, and question number 1 is in the name of Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for State-Owned Enterprises and asks, what is the forecast cost to the Crown of the government's plan to allow buyers of Meridian Energy shares to pay for their shares in instalments, and will the instalment scheme be open to overseas institutions?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Meridian share offer. It's on. As I advised the member in the House last month, there is no forecast cost for instalment receipts because any such estimate would be affected by many factors, including the final price of the shares. And to the second part of his question, yes, that's been known since last month when the government announced the instalment receipt structure for investors.
Point of order.
Point of order, Dr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek leave to table an estimate of the cost of about $61 million reviewed by the Parliamentary Library.
Source of the Parliamentary Library.
Yeah.
Leave is sought to table that particular estimate prepared by the Parliamentary Library. Is there any objection? There is none. It can be so tabled.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, for clarity, can the Minister confirm that the government is going to make ordinary New Zealanders effectively subsidise the purchase of these shares through these interest-free loans, and these interest-free loans are going to be made available to overseas institutions such as investment banks?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, there is no plan to have New Zealanders subsidise the sale of shares in in Meridian Energy. It's quite clear that the use of instalment receipts will help drive interest and demand in these shares.
Supplementary question, Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
To the Minister, if Meridian is such a good buy, why does the government need to use a taxpayer-subsidised and uncosted, apart from the costing provided by the Parliamentary Librarian, buy now, pay later scheme to entice investors to purchase Meridian shares if the company is such a good long-term investment? Come on, Twinkle Toes.
On order. Order. Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. Interjections like that at the end of the questions are most unhelpful. Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, as the member knows, the government is pursuing a mixed ownership model program. It is about freeing up our investment in a minority stake in a number of these energy companies, and the proceeds that will be used are to go into the Future Investment Fund earmarked for investment in important infrastructure, schools, roads and hospitals. And the government's been very clear about that from the very beginning.
Supplementary question, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
How can the government expect so-called mum and dad investors to invest in Meridian when the few that invested with Mighty River Power have collectively already lost a staggering $120 million?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr. Speaker, despite the economic sabotage of the Labour and Green parties, 113,000 investors bought shares in Mighty River Power, and it has proven very successful for the New Zealand taxpayer. We now have $1.7 billion in cash, which is earmarked for important investments such as the Christchurch City hospitals. It's been a significant win for all New Zealanders.
Supplementary question, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Is he aware that over the last decade, Meridian Energy paid over $3 billion to the Crown in dividends? So how on earth is he going to make up for a $1.5 billion hole in the budget? Or to paraphrase Sir Winston Churchill, never has so much been stolen from so many for the benefit of so few sleazy crony mates.
Order. Order. And again, I'm very tempted to rule that question out of order. I'm going to let it go on this occasion, but questions, imputations like that about sleazy mates, etc., do not lead to good order in this House. I leave it for the Minister.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Point of order.
Point of order, Right Honourable Winston
Peters. Mr.
Peters.
Speaker, you might draw the line on character assassination of MPs, and that's fair enough. but I'm referring to somebody outside the House, and you've got no authority whatsoever on that
Order.
matter. Yeah.
I have authority while I'm Speaker of this House, and what I said to the member, I was very inclined to rule the question out. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt on this occasion, but if he continues to argue with the Chair, then I won't give him that benefit any longer. Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr Speaker, a number of those dividends that the member refers to were one-offs, and they can't be repeated because you can't sell Southern Hydro twice. And of course the revenue and dividend flows will all be detailed in the financial accounts and the pre-investment statement that's coming out on Friday. It is disappointing that the member didn't express this view about investors when he worked with me when we privatised Auckland International Airport in the late 1990s.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question. Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister confirm that if Goldman Sachs, based in the United States, for example, were to buy Meridian shares, that Goldman Sachs will be allowed to access the interest-free loans in order to buy those shares?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr Speaker, they're not interest-free loans, but certainly all investors will be able to use instalment receipts. That's what the government's been very clear. But I do need to make this clear to the member. It's a very, very basic rule of IPO economics. If the instalment receipt structure lifts the price by even 1 cent a share, the taxpayer gains millions and millions and millions of dollars from the float that we would not have otherwise received. And that money can be used to invest in important social infrastructure, and we don't need to print it like that member would want to.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Does the Minister disagree then that, given that the buyers will be given the shares and will be taking the dividends from the shares before they have to pay for them, and they won't have to pay for them for 18 months, how is that not an interest-free loan?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr Speaker, it's not an interest-free loan, it's instalment receipts, where members should be aware of what goes on there. But the fact is, they are two different things, and if I have to explain the difference to the member, then I think we've got a problem. But the point that the member needs to realise is whatever the benefit is, it does go to interest and demand for the shares, and that is what gives benefit to the New Zealand taxpayers, who are retaining 51% of this company.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Does the Minister have any information as to whether the Prime Minister will be on the phone, as he was on the phone to the head of Rio Tinto recently? Will he be on the phone to his old friends at Merrill Lynch and telling them that they can get interest-free loans to buy shares in Meridian, and the cost of the interest-free loans will be paid for by the New Zealand taxpayer?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
That's simply not correct, the suggestions that the members made. What I've explained to him is that instalment receipts, the benefits of such, will go directly to demand and interest in the shares of Meridian Energy. And for every 1 cent increase we get in the value of those shares as a result of the instalment receipts is many millions of dollars in cash for New Zealand taxpayers. So we retain 51% of Meridian Energy, we get an increased value for the 49%, and that money goes into providing services and benefits for New Zealanders without having to borrow. And it's controlling debt that is fundamental to the mixed ownership model program.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can he think of a more extreme case of a government that favours the rich and the rich and the powerful over everybody else than the example of giving interest-free loans to offshore investment banks so that they can purchase shares in what is currently a company owned by the people of New Zealand?
Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr Speaker, the government's been quite clear on the reason why we've got these instalment receipts, and we've also been very clear that at float this company will be owned 85 to 90% by New Zealanders. That's our goal. And the reason why we are doing that is it's part of our wider economic plan to help control debt and to invest in the schools, roads and hospitals that New Zealanders want. That member may want to borrow the money from foreign bankers. This government believes we can do that ourselves as New Zealanders.
Question number 2, John Hayes.